Yeah, we're live. 7 o'clock, right on the dot. Nailed it. It's official. So much to talk about tonight. Lots of cool stuff. I'm very excited, as you saw from the thumbnail and from the description. I honestly I didn't even get a heads up from David. I was kind of surprised. I'm hoping everything's okay. But the video, David posted a video. David Vizard, for you guys. You guys, I'm sure, are all familiar with him. But if you are not, please go check out his channel because he's got. If you want to know something about airflow testing and head porting and all of that, he's got a ton of information. And lucky for me, I have met him and known him for a number of years. And so he wanted to do a collaboration with me, which I was honored. I thought it was awesome. And I told him about two things that I was doing. And one of them was that 2.2 liter Dodge turbo deal. We're doing a bunch of testing on that motor and also a 2.5 version of that. So he offered to port ahead. And I'm like, hey, look, how do you turn that down? There's no way you should. So I got him the head. And now he has he did one video on it already where he did the port mold of it. So when you pour the stuff in there and it solidifies, and then you can take it out and you can see what the shape of the port is. And after he showed that, quite honestly, I was a little dismayed on what the potential of the port was, what that thing was going to flow, given the way that it looked. It was not what you'd call an ideal port shape by any stretch of the imagination. Fresh cold beverage. But after seeing that, I was a little disheartened. But then after seeing this video today, I watched it earlier this morning. After seeing that and seeing the flow numbers, I'm actually a little bit impressed, especially since that head hasn't ever been treated to a valve job or anything. It's just one that came off of a motor that was sent to him. So I'm surprised that it worked as well as it did. I think that there's going to be a lot that he can do to it because he knows I think he sees airflow. So, and he knows what to do with the valve job and the shape and all of it. So the cool thing about it is it's not just because when I do something, I would just we have a flow bench at West Tech, obviously. And so I would flow it. And we would just flow it at the different lifts and stuff, and we would discuss possibly what the power potential is and maybe use the flow numbers. And a lot of guys use that to choose their camshaft and stuff. And he goes into it's way more elaborate what he goes into. So there's a lot of good, I think it's a Flowcom deal. And he goes into a lot more data and there's a lot more information there. So for you guys that are technical guys, you guys can go check that out. And even if you're not, you'll see what he's doing. And he goes into good detail and even has seminars, and you could actually go learn from him, which is a good opportunity if that's the kind of thing that you're looking at. Even if you're not thinking about doing it like for a living, which a lot of people aren't. But if you go take his classes and learn how to port, just think about how much you can save by doing your own stuff. So that's something to think about there. I wish that I knew how to do that. And I also wish that I had the time and the inclination to go and import heads and make that work. There are guys that are very good at it. So a lot of times I let those guys do it. I did a little bit on the, which head did I do? Oh, on the 3800, I did a little bit, and it definitely pays off. But I'm by no means. I mean, that was really, I think, my second effort at ever doing anything like that. I did a little bit of porting on one of the 5.3 heads, did some chamber work, and I was talking to Brian while I was doing it, and he just told me what to do. So when you have an expert telling you, hey, look, just widen the area around the valve in the chamber, unshroud the valve, I can understand that stuff. But it turned out that on the 3800 head, it worked fairly well and improved the airflow. I don't know what it did to power because I wasn't able to directly test it. And I only did one set, one intake and one exhaust. But it did improve it. So I would like to know more about that. I think that would be good, really good information. And he has a lot of data. So if you guys haven't checked it out, make sure that you go check out his stuff because you should be following him anyway. I mean, if you're a technical guy and you want performance information, he's a good guy to take a look at. So that's that stuff. I'm anxious to see what he does. The only information that he gave on this particular video was the intake flow. So I'm interested to see what happens on the exhaust. I'm also interested to see what happens on the after part, after they do the porting, to see where they can go and where he chooses to go. Because I think he's thinking that we're going to be in the 500 to 600 lift range, which I think is probably where we would pick for the camshaft. I just need to make sure that we can make that work with spring packages and retainer seal clearance and all that, but that we can get into all that. And then I more than likely will do some kind of custom intake manifold too, an adjustable one. You know, it'd be nice to do taper and all that, but it's probably going to be a fixed diameter, but we'll be able to adjust the length, which is cool. And then once we run that, and I can test that NA like we always do, and once I figure out what RPM range I want to run, then we can apply boost to that. And we'll be doing all kinds of testing with the 2.2 and hopefully the 2.5 as well, showing what all the things do without the limitation of not being able to tune it. And the other thing that happened today is I got very excited after talking to my buddy Jimmy from HP. As I say, from HP, he just hasn't owned HP in a long time because they haven't been in business. But he was giving me some more information on the NSX. And so we're going to do some videos on that. But we were talking about the adventure that we had when we drove back from Southern California, essentially. And I went to get him in Albuquerque. And then we drove to the Maxted Mile with a little Chevy Sprint Turbo. And we were talking about using we wanted to lower the car so it'd be more aerodynamic. So we use hose clamps. And we were talking about that. And I got excited about the Sprint motor. So the next time I go down to West Tech, I'm definitely going to bring that Sprint motor over and see what it will take to adapt that to the dyno. So it should be pretty fun. I don't have a transmission. I just have the engine, and but I have a bunch of spare parts for, I think, a whole nother engine on the Sprint. So you could build a race motor because the other one is basically stock right now. But if I do it, I'm definitely going to have, I will definitely have the guys from Schneider do a regrind on the camshaft because it will definitely need a cam. The cam is pretty mild in it. And I think that guys were even doing adjustable cam sprockets and stuff, which would be pretty easy, and it should be beneficial. But I had some work. We did some work on that Sprint motor back when I was driving it because I was doing things for this combination actually to improve fuel mileage without hurting power. And I think we ended up improving the power. So it did a little bit of porting and quite a bit of work on the valve job. And the guys from AccuFab helped me with this. And we were able to pick up a pretty good bit of flow without hurting, without changing volume very much and stuff. So it was really kind of a good exercise. And then I tried a few things with different injector spray patterns and pressure and stuff. We obviously lowered the car into belly pans. And so there's a lot of things that I did to try to improve the fuel mileage, and it was all beneficial. I had bought tires on it that were really low rolling resistance tires. They were very lightweight and, all of that stuff. So it was a good exercise, but I would really love to run that thing on the engine dyno without the limitation of the vane meter of the flapper door and being limited in what I could do in terms of how much fuel I could get to it and adjusting the timing. The timing would be nice because it just has a conventional distributor on it, and it has a vacuum advanced boost retard pod on the distributor. And when I was running it, I put in a tile bypass valve, and I replaced the factory air-to-air intercooler because those things are really cool. They have a little opening in the hood, like I think to the side or above the radiator, and it says intercooled on it, which is, right away, that's awesome because you have a scoop and it says intercooled, so it's a turbo, and it says turbo right on the side of it. So that had an air-to-air, and so the air theoretically would enter there and go through the intercooler. Now, the first thing I did was make a little fence, a little bridge, so that all the air had to go through the intercooler. But still, where it was positioned and the pressure inside the engine compartment, it probably didn't have very much flow. I was thinking about putting a fan under it to help draw the air, and then I thought, you know what, I'm just going to put an air to water on it. So I got rid of the air to air and put an air to water in it. The guys from Kenny Bell got me a core from something they were using, and we welded tanks on it and stuff, and put the bypass valve on it, and it all worked out really good. We were able to lower the charge temperatures dramatically, even under everyday driving. I put another secondary heat exchanger up in front of the radiator and a little pump to circulate that. I had a little, the thing that I used for the reservoir for the cooling system for that intercooler was a 1 gallon or 2 gallon red plastic gas tank. I wish I would have picked something else, especially when we were out racing it, because the opening for it, where you would pour gas out of it, was big enough for us to basically put 1 ice cube at a time. And when we were out at the Max and Mile trying to set the land speed records, we ran ice water in it, but we had to put all the ice cubes in 1 at a time. So I want to run all that on the engine dyno. So I'm going to figure out a way to do that. So that would be cool. And then the video that I put up today is a 5-liter Ford, and I like 5-liter Fords. I mean, I like most motors that we test. The 5-liter Ford stuff is cool. And then I showed a comparison between 2 different motors that I ran. It's not a back-to-back test of the different forms of forced induction, but you guys have lots of that up on the channel, so you guys can by now you should know what it does. And if you're new to the channel, go look at the 3 or 4 videos that I have up where we compare all the different forms to show what they do. But essentially, you can kind of choose your power curve. With a turbo, it's, especially with this slightly undersized turbo that we ran on the heads cam and intake 5-liter that we did, it's a little over 600 horsepower and 600 foot-pounds of torque. We had a slightly decreasing boost curve on that combination because the turbo was was undersized, and we were using a manual wastegate controller, which is not optimum for having a nice flat boost curve. But and then the other combination was a trick flow top end 5-liter. I think it was an Explorer short block, I think. Same kind of, one of them had RHS aluminum heads on it and a Holley Systemax manifold and the 274 cam. And the other one had the 11R heads and the trick flow intake, and then the same kind of camshaft. It was trick flow's version. It was a stage 2. But on that combination, we ran the Torque Storm centrifugal supercharger, which is sized pretty well for that kind of power level. It's not going to make a lot of power, but we were only making, less than 650 on both of them, 620, 630, right in that range. So, but they're good examples, and they go to show you that at that power level, what the difference in the curve can be, because the centrifugal has a rising curve. So we went from basically starting out at about 3 pounds up to 10 pounds. And then on the turbo, we had about 10 pounds out at the top, but we actually had more boost down low, again, because to get 10 pounds, we had to have more than that because we had a falling boost curve on the turbo, again, size and a manual wastegate controller, which is not ideal. So that was the video for today. So that's kind of cool stuff. Anytime I can run a turbo on that stuff, it's really good. And I think I ran the old HP Performance single turbo kit for the Fox Mustang. I've run lots of other stuff besides that, but that stuff was nice because it had the slip fit crossover pipe, and it actually had kind of tubular headers and a front mounted air-to-air intercooler and all that stuff. Normally, when I was running those kits, they had a whole set turbo, but this one, that's the one that I had laying around. So we ended up using that small 72 millimeter, which is, was okay. But I actually had that turbo was actually for my Honda Civic that we ran out at Bonneville. And so, it doesn't care. It was 4-cylinder, 8-cylinder, whatever. It'll do it. It did it a little bit better on the Honda than it did on the bigger 5-liter, but it still would work. So let's see what you port the head on the Sprint motor. We did a little bit. It already is ported, and it's already better by, I want to say we got like 15 or 16 CFM out of it from what little work that they did mostly on the valve job and stuff. Because I purposely didn't want them to take, I wanted to keep all of the, we want to keep the port volume small in the head because I wanted to maximize, torque production, cylinder filling, if that it was even a thing with that. I don't know. I think what I really should have done was and what I was working on is I wanted to make a different runner length manifold. I wanted to, for cruise, the ideal thing I think would have been to do a really long runner manifold. Who makes pistons for a Sprint? I have some, Briggs. I have some Wiseco pistons actually, and forged rods for it, which I think I had the rods done, and I think I had them done. I may have had them done by Potter. I think they did custom ones for me. Okay, so let's see what you guys got going on. Let's see what Austin's doing. Go back and see what Austin was asking, because he's talking about some kind of turbo application where it's a limited. Okay, I see what you're trying to do, Austin. You have a horsepower limit for some sort of racing class, but you can make that, if you can make that horsepower through the whole curve from wherever you want your peak to be all the way back, what's going to happen is the torque curve is going to go like this. That's one thing that I remember talking to the Eureka Viper team when they were running Le Mans. We were talking to them at one of the races, because when I was running World Challenge, we were talking to them, and they said that they had to run restrictors on these motors, and they kept restricting them, and these 8-liter V10s that they were running, and it was actually good for them, because what it did was it limited them to something like, let's say, 600 horsepower, except that it also limited, for them, it didn't make any sense for them to rev the motor. So they were only running like 5,800 RPM or something. And the motors would last indefinitely, they said. They said, we loved it because we had big motors that were limited by the restrictor outlet of making a certain power level, but it would essentially make that much power, you know, from the power peak at 5,800, but it would still be making that same amount of power at like 4,000 RPM also. So the torque was just tremendous. So the things were like, for the drivers, they were just really easy to drive. And it was a better combination, as it turned out, compared to the Porsches and stuff that they were racing. And the Porsches obviously were turbo Porsches, and they were very expensive, but they also had restrictors on them. And so they didn't have the power curves that the Eureka Viper teams had, which was kind of cool. And that's kind of what you're talking about there, is just having lots and lots of torque. That'd be cool. Did you pour it with a dentist drill? Yes. Let's see. I use too much dielectric grease on the plug boots on my 85. Chasing an occasional misfire, sluggish performance. Cleaned it all out and miss is gone. So the grease actually caused the like resistance. That's interesting. One stock cam, thank you very much. When you have boost as a longer short runner, react the same as NA? Yes, it does exactly the same. I just posted the world's fastest Shelby Daytona. Very cool. What's the most horsepower you can build a 2-bolt main 454 board to 468? I don't know what the most, I mean, are you trying to make 2,000 horsepower or something with that block? That's probably not a good idea. Oh, it's a powered away class. Can the EFI University high revving LS7 hold a long time of pressure? I don't know what you mean by long time of pressure. I don't, are you talking about running it under boost or something? Richard, a little off subject. That's okay. There's no subject matter here. You can ask whatever question you want. When you build all this power and torque, what converter brand? I don't have a brand. I'm not brand specific. And also, I'm not a converter guy, because we don't have to run converters on the engine dyno. It makes my life a lot easier. That being said, you can, if you have an engine, the camshaft is going to play a big part in what your converter choice is. But with power, you're going to have a really good converter. Big belly racing. Hey, Richard, just got in. The 2.2 head is ported. How did it turn out? You have to watch David Vizard's video. It's up now. That's what this was about. He just posted the stock flow figures, but not the ported ones yet. That's what the video is. And I was very surprised at how well it did stock. Edward, on the trick blow setup 5 liter in the video you posted today would have been fun with a small turbo. It made lots more torque below 4,000. Yeah, but as you saw from the turbo thing, the turbo that we used, even on the one that made less, because that when we put that high ram on there, because we also ran that combination with like a GT40 style intake, and it made a lot more low speed power with the GT40 intake. It just didn't make what the top end, what that Systemax did, what the ported Systemax did. But even with that, that small turbo was very, very responsive on that combination. Did you see what head flowed the most with the 2.2, 2.5 Chrysler yet? I've only seen flow numbers on the intake side, which is what Vizard did. Vans, what matters more with the fast 102 intake, the intake design or the throttle body size? The intake design is way more important than the throttle body size. Could a fast 102 with a 92 millimeter throttle body work just as well on a more mild combination? If you don't need the airflow, you also don't need what that intake manifold is doing. That intake manifold is worth more power on a wilder combination than it is on a milder combination. Coke over cherry Pepsi. I didn't have a cherry Pepsi on hand. That was the problem. Let's see. Did the intake results today? I don't know what that is. Oh, they did the intake airflow results on the 2.2 liter head. My dream build would be a McLaren F1. Yeah, I think it was an 184 or something on the intake. Yes, a spark plug change on the Navigator is far more difficult than you would imagine. You ever going to revisit ported GT40P heads? I don't remember ever visiting that. Did I do a video on that? I don't ever remember porting GT40 heads. I've been to so many of these live chats, I'm starting to know the answers to a lot of these questions. Well, good. Then you can just answer them for me. That makes my life a lot easier. Mike, your power came back on. That's fantastic. I have several fresh batch of hand scars, and I only got one plug out. Yeah, if I find if you just curse at all the rest of them, they come out by themselves. Oh, Punk's in the house. My nurse and I are eating dinner and watching your live chat and learning a whole bunch. Well, that's fantastic, man. I hope you're doing okay. I would like to see more small versus large turbo testing. Me too. You come close on some tests, but there's still a lot of variables. 600 horsepower turbo and 1,000 horsepower turbo. Put them both at the same boost pressure. I have one test like that where we ran the GT45 and an S475. So that's more like a 700 horsepower turbo. And although I did also run the I ran the T76, and then I also ran what I thought was a 62 millimeter. Turns out it's bigger than that. It's like a 67 millimeter. The precision turbo. I ran those all on the 4.8, and we tried to get them at the same boost level. The problem was even with the electronic boost controller program to run the same boost, the boost curve is not exactly the same. And so I'm thinking what's happening, and I don't remember if I saw it. I don't know if I was data logging back pressure or not. It's got to be a back pressure change with the because it's a pretty sizable change in turbos. I mean, the Summit Racing S475 was a T6, and it was a 1.32 AR T6. So it was a big T6. And some of the other ones were probably 0.96 or something, and much smaller wheels. What did you do for a valve timing on the 2.2? I haven't run a 2.2 yet. All we did, I haven't chosen a cam yet for it. Elon Musk totaled McLaren. So did Gordon Murray, unfortunately, much to his chagrin. Keto, it has twin GT45s, AFR 305 heads, forged pistons, 10.5 to 1, Holley 4500 throttle body. I just want to know how much I should boost it, thinking 1,000 to 1,200 on a 2-bolt main. Yeah, you've got way more turbo on there than you need for, I would think, for a 2-bolt main. I would think you should, and if it's going to be in a drag car or something like that, where you're doing limited full throttle pulls, it should last a lot longer. Just put it at 1,000 horsepower. How often are you going to be using it? Are you going to be drag racing it? I want a 1959 Ford Ranch wagon. That's a good one. On Facebook, a guy was giving away a free 5.3 liter with 799 heads. So it's a Gen 4 more than likely. Are those good heads? Yeah, those are like 243 heads. Yankee, good evening. Thank you for the great information. Help me make some important decisions building Ugly Betty. Well, okay, let's all hear it for Ugly Betty. I hear good things. Have a 6-liter LS that I'm putting 862 heads on, a 205 217 cam, 10.5. Same engine with stock 71cc cast iron heads as 300 at the wheels. Should this combo net me around 40 to 50 horsepower and torque? You're going to get, if the one, let's see, same engine with cast iron heads. So is the only change the heads and a tune, or is it also the cam? If it's just the heads, I don't think you're going to pick up 40 or 50 horsepower, unless the tune was way off. Fell off the couch. Grooves. I finished building ignition 1A coil harness for a 2JZ tonight. I'm not a wiring guy. So was that I'm not a wiring guy? Was you just throwing that out there in case somebody was going to ask you to do their wiring harness? Victor, sorry, meant you were going to port GT40 heads and test GT40P heads. I'm not going to port them. I have no interest in porting a set of iron GT40 heads. The David Vizard has ported GT40 heads, and you can see, I'm sure you can see what the potential is from somebody that knows what they're doing. And it's pretty easy to see what kind of power you could get from something like that, and what's going to determine whether or not you can get that power from whatever kind of airflow we got. I don't even know what a ported set of P heads flows, but whatever airflow you get from that, if you can maximize the power potential from that head, that's going to be determined by the rest of the combination. If you just put it on a stock 302, it's not going to do anything, or it's going to do very little. If you put it on one that's a 331 or a 347 with a good sized cam in it and the right intake manifold, then you can kind of take advantage of what those have to offer. Caps. Let's see. My dad has a question. I have a 97 LT1, has an OptiSpark, keeps failing. What can I do to replace the OptiSpark or fix the problem? I thought that the later OptiSparks that had the drain hole or something in them so that water wouldn't get in was kind of the cure, but I can't swear to that. And I think some guys are replacing that with some other kind of coil on plug deal. How much ring gap on 10 PSI? You may as well just put ring gap in it, because if you have 10 now, you're going to have more later, but you could go to the 28 to 30 range. If you're maxed out on compressor on a turbo and you add nitrous, these theoretical questions, you gain power because you can burn more fuel, but you've choked on the turbine side, then you spray, would you see a difference? I think if you add nitrous, you will see a power gain, but I don't, because you're not, I don't know at what point this is like the throttle body question. Okay, what if you max out the flow of your throttle body where you start losing power? You don't lose power. What happens is the draw on the throttle body changes. So if you have, for instance, if you flow a throttle body and it flows 1,000 CFM, you're flowing it at 28 inches. if you put more motor under it, all of a sudden it doesn't, the flow rate isn't at 28 inches anymore. Now it's 30 or 40 or 50 or whatever the restriction is. You might see something like that with the turbo. I think if we add nitrous, I think you're going to gain power. You just might not gain it at the same rate if you're limited in hot side. I think the back pressure is going to go way up though. What brand type of roller rocker is your favorite for an LS? My favorite rocker for an LS is a stock one, maybe one with a trunnion upgrade. I don't normally run roller rockers on LS motors. I have in some tests, but I don't normally recommend them. They're very heavy. They require a lot of spring, and you can run into valve float issues unless you have enough spring rate. Ignition 1A is greater than LS coils. Cool. You're going to have to bypass the ECU. Only way I can see it working. I don't know who that statement is directed towards. Oh, Jim, this is going to be an interesting question. My 77 Kawasaki KZ1000 Turbo, if I like it already, uses a draw-through Mikuni carb, a Ray J Turbo. Yeah, OG, I like it. I would like to micro squirt it. What size turbo would you recommend? About 175 horsepower. Let's see, what is a good 200 horsepower turbo? Like, look on the Garrett site and look at like a GT20, something like that. GT20, they also have GT22s, I think, something in that range. I'm a little worried about the, I can't imagine that Ray J is sized for that application unless it's an old motorcycle turbo, like from a GPZ 750 or even that 500 Honda turbo would be too small for that. 175, even maybe a little Volkswagen turbo might do that. One of the TDO4s, or what are the little, who made the little Volkswagen turbos? Did IHI make those? Or I think KKK did. The thing was a 2.2 TBI cam with roller rockers for a 2.2, 2.5 turbos in the day. I think that that TBI cam was better. The thing that I want to test that I'm going to have to do some modifications to is I have the NA 2.2 intake manifold also, the throttle body intake manifold, which I think is probably, it might be the best one, but it'll be interesting to see. Little drag racing, mostly car shows, hot rod power tour. Then I would just not worry about the maximum power. Just run it at like 700 or 800 horsepower or something. And if you find yourself, half a car or a fender or whatever behind somebody else, then you have more in reserve. The water pump's leaking and fix it so many times. Yeah. Mega Squirt Ford EFI, E-Disc, ignition, easy, micro squirt, unit is cheapest. Okay. I want a 52 split window VW. Those are kind of cool. 36 horsepower and a Judson supercharger. Wow. He lost me at Iron Heads. Yep. What engine below 300 inches of displacement would you pick to take on an LS7? I don't think that you're going to be very successful at that. Brzezinski still ports Iron Heads. I think that they probably do, right? Because they probably use those for like roundy round classes and stuff. I think even a Judd V10 is going to be too big. I think that those were 4 liters maybe. My friend has a 73 Cutlass with a Rocket 350. Very nice. Who do we talk to about cams? Well, I haven't ever built or run an Oldsmobile, but I think that I'm an expert like everybody else on the internet. But honestly, the cam for that, for any kind of a street 350, is going to be the same as it is for a Pontiac or a Chevy or anything else. If you want to look at a street one, you're going to look at something that's going to be 220-ish, probably, or less, assuming you can get springs for that. I don't know what the piston to valve clearance is, but that usually in the 220 or less, that usually is kind of in the safe range. So for a motor like that, some kind of cam like that, if you do a valve job and stuff on the head, that's good. Long tube headers, good. I know that Edelbrock has to have like an RPM or an RPM air gap style intake for that, I don't know, 650 or 750, and you're on your way. Decap injectors on 8 PSI on a boosted 4.8 liter. You can't just decap the injectors that you have. You're gonna have to do a whole bunch of them because you won't get 8 of them. You won't get the first 8 that you do are not going to be the same. They're not going to flow the same. And you're going to have them all flowed to make sure that they're the same. So you have to do like 16 or 20 of them to get 8 of them that work. Detra cams? I've never heard of them. Edward, do you find the horsepower per pound of boost on LS engines to be larger than old school small block Fords? It's not LS versus small block Ford. The horsepower that you make per pound of boost is a function of the power output of the NA motor. So whatever that is. So for instance, if you might take a stock 4.8 and a modified 5 liter. If the modified 5 liter makes more NA power, it's going to have more horsepower per pound of boost. Whichever one makes more NA power is the one that will make more horsepower per pound of boost when you add boost to it. Oh, Tom, good, dude. I'm glad you're feeling better. So I made a ventilator with an M122 blower, all good now. Perfect. You should sell those. You could market them. Hopes and dreams. I have a GSR B18C1 block. Nice. I'm going to turbo it. Stock internals with ring gap. We do 7,000ths per inch of bore. I can't. GSR, if I remember right, is an 81 millimeter bore and an 87.2 stroke. So that's 3 point something, right? If I remember right. 81 by 24, 25.4, 3.188. Is that right? Yeah, 3.189. Okay, so you're looking at 22-ish or so on the ring gap. What kind of power? And I like those. I used the GSR block and crank for one of our Bonneville motors, and then we ended up using a dart block for another one. I had a sleeved GSR block. What kind of power can be expected from a 6-liter LQ4 with 243 heads, Gen 4 intake? Insert recommended cam, a square body that will not be towing. Are you looking at a stock bottom end 6-liter? If you're looking at that, take a look at the video that I have up on 6-liter cams. There already is that combination that I ran with different kinds of cams, and with the cam that you would run, that would be the biggest cam kind of that you could fit in there on that application. It would be somewhere in the low 500 flywheel range with a stock 243 head. Iron takes a long time to port. Concept, you're still being like ultra vague, and oh, maybe that wasn't directed at me. So no, we're all good. I have a Cutlass with a 455 board 40 over, running a jet stage quadrajet. Okay, should I run something different as it's a streetcar? If the quadrajet works good on that, then just run that. If it's the thing is I can't tell people universally that one carburetor is good and one of them is not good. I've seen them go both ways. I've seen people come in with, you know, to the chassis diner or whatever with their carburetor not working good. That carburetor can be a Carter or a Quadrajet or a Holly or whatever it is, and it can be not working. And then when we put one that works, it works. So if that's working well, I've seen lots of really good running Q-Jet stuff, and I like the way that they sound when you turn the air cleaner lid over. Which guys, please keep reminding me. I do need to do that on the video. We need to do the wow. We need to turn the air cleaner lid over. I was trying to package a small turbo for my NA 205 horsepower sport bike, one that needs to support 300 horsepower. Garrett has a lot of good stuff that's in that range. 300 horsepower is not, like I said, the factory VW stuff is in that range. The really small KKK turbos from the 1.8Ts and those, take a look at those. It's going to be weird packaging them because all of the factory turbos use some sort of weird exhaust. See, there's Taj, GT2252 for a Nissan 3-liter diesel. That's what I was telling you. If you look at the Garrett stuff, the small, I have a GT22 that we ran on the Sprint motor, and the Sprint motor only was rated at 70 horsepower with boost. So meaning it was like a 48 or 50 horsepower NA motor. It was not very stellar. Yeah, I Triple K made those German ones. What turbo to use on a blow-through Willys Go Devil flathead? I just need to know the power output. The motor doesn't matter. Yeah, when you're grinding on stuff, we use a lot of times we'll use ATF or something, and it's just a mess all the way around. It's nice to have those systems that have the vacuum cleaner on them and it sucks the stuff away. That works good, but you still have to make sure that you cool off the carbide cutters. Oh, those guys got bought out by Borg Warner. Oh, that's cool. The micro skirt stuff works good. We have a Mega Squirt and an MS3 Pro for the 4200, and it's actually good stuff. It's way better than I am, which I guess maybe it's not saying a whole bunch. You should definitely do a Turbo 2.3 Lima test. I way back I remember talking to Mark Sanchez wanting to do the SVO turbo motor because I thought that he had one there, but it would be kind of cool. What spark plug do you recommend for a turbo? You can use the, let's see, what do we have over there? We would use an 8 or a 9 heat range, and then you could use the NGK stuff, or we have a lot of Denso stuff there, and some Champion race plugs, just whatever we have laying around. KO3S or KO4B, okay. I use a vacuum on the opposite side of the port. That's normally the way that it's done. A 1.3-liter rotary will beat an LS7. Unless one of them is turbocharged, like the little one. You're working on a 79 Camaro drag car, 2,400 pounds. Nice. That's a good start. That'll make your engine, you'll make you look like a hero. 6-liter, 1,000 horsepower. Ring gap is going to be 28 to 30. Truck Norris cam, that's fine. The turbo, I would put an S475 or an S480 for that. Do you believe that bottom rings need more gap than top rings? I've seen the ring manufacturers tell me both ways. I just put the same in both of them. Didn't even think of rotaries. A three rotor. There you go. So you need a big block rotary. So why doesn't somebody do a 5 rotor or a 6 rotor? Hopes and dreams. Happy to help, man. Second ring is more for oil control than compression. So use any sort of PCV with an LS motor on the dyno. When we run it, I always run because one of the things that we found out is they have a lot of crankcase pressure. So we run the valve cover on the driver's side near the filler neck that has the little 90-degree. We run that open. If it has a center valley PCV, we run that open. And then over on the driver's side, I run a valve cover that we run on the motors on the dyno that basically has an opening in the valve cover. And then we just have a big, it's basically, we've just screwed an AN fitting with a hose on it. And the hose just runs back to the back of the dyno just to make sure that we're not, you don't want oil splashing out of that like you would with, because sometimes we've run them with the open fill neck and just put a rag over it and zip tie it. You got to do what you got to do. But with the big hose, we just run that out of the way and it has plenty of breathing and then we don't have to worry about it. Is there going to be, Richard, is there going to be more 4.2 liter Atlas content coming? Yes. American Rambler dropped in. I have been waiting on the 2.2 to be discussed here again. One of the engines I enjoyed in the past. Yeah, go take a look at David Vizard's video. He did some airflow testing on the stock turbo head. So hopefully he'll have the ported version up pretty soon. Back end to feed the Sasquatch. Would it be better to build an aluminum 6.2 or a steel 6.0 for boost? If you're running lots of power, I would pick the iron 6 liter. What is better, the Turbo 2 head or the G head? I don't know what the Turbo 2 head is. Is that the 781 or 782 head is that the later one? I'm told that the G head is. I haven't compared the two. Daniel, twin 69mm BorgWarner 300s will be right in the middle of the map, equivalent to a 96mm turbo, perfect for 1,000 real horsepower, but with methanol you can make 2,000. If you have 2,000 horsepower with a turbo, they're not going to be very responsive at 1,000 horsepower. How much compression is too much when you consider boosting? It depends on the octane of your fuel. 650 wheel horsepower on a torque storm would be difficult. That camshaft will be fine. If you put a turbo on it, it will work really well. When choosing twin turbo size, should you treat the engine as two smaller ones, like a 6 liter being sized as 2 3 liters? I don't look at that. I look at the flow rate of the turbo versus how much power I want to make. So if you have two 500 horsepower turbos and you want to make 1,000 horsepower, that's a win, right? That's how I look at it. And then I don't have to separate the motor out as part of that. Then I just make the NA power output to be what I want. And then that's going to dictate at what boost level those turbos are going to make that power output, assuming I wouldn't pick turbos that can only do 1,000 horsepower to make 1,000 horsepower. I would pick ones that would do like 1,200 so that you have some excess and they'll be in a more favorable part of the map. And then they have some, because when everybody says they want 1,000 horsepower, as soon as they get that and run that and are successful in not crashing that, then they're going to want 11 or 1,200. Factory Honda and Kia turbos have standard 4-bolt flange to exhaust manifolds, but are those are on the Honda stuff is on K series, right? I've never seen a Kia, so I don't know what size those are. But those are going to be, are those going to be T3s, or are they their own weird kind of flange? The Go Devil flatted 68 horsepower, 109 foot-pounds of torque on 7-to-1 compression. So how much do you want to like double it? So you want to make a whopping 140 minus 4, 136 horsepower? That's a pretty small turbo. Will you ever build another Honda to run at the salt flats? I'd like to. I have something planned that I would like to do. Oh, the 6 rotor didn't last because of the dowel pins. I forgot about that. They have something that goes all the way through there. All right, Concept. I'll see you later, man. I still don't always understand what you're saying. Ours is just a turbo coupe, but we're chucking on a GT 3571. Nice. I had laying around. I think we ran, back when I was doing stuff with Dave from Tiny Avenger on that 2.3, I think we ran a 57 millimeter turbo on his eventually. And I think it got up to around 400 at the tire. Am I way behind? Do I need to? Oh, I am, huh? The top speed of the Honda was 226 and change, 226 point something. Let's see here. 226.352 was the record. That was the combined number. Should I drop my compression from 11.3 to 10.5 for 21 pounds on ethanol? That's enough. That's the right kind of fuel to be doing that. Edward, you have a 331. You want to run a turbo on it? Take a look at the 363 that I did with the turbo on it. That was an 80 millimeter from Comp Turbo. So kind of like an S480, you would think it'd be like that. If you're only looking for 800, I still would lean towards an S475. Would love to see more of the Honda motors, but with David Vizard's polyquad treatment. I don't know what a polyquad treatment is. We didn't have any problem making Honda power to do what we needed to do. We were not limited in power. We only ran the motor on the Salt. We ran the motor at only a maximum of 16 to 17 pounds. And we ran the motor as high as 29 pounds on the dyno. I don't know how long it would last at 29 pounds, but it lasts a long time at 20 or 22 or 24 pounds. It would make passes like that all day long if we could put all of that down and not have the axle pop out and stuff. So making the power was not an issue at all. Richard, how do you feel about the hooker cast turbo manifolds for LSs that run with the turbo of 1 passenger? They work good. They package well. They're limited in their flow. I would like to keep them. You know, if you're looking for 800 horsepower stuff or 700 horsepower stuff, it's probably a good choice. If you're looking for 1,000 horsepower, 1,200 horsepower stuff, it's not a good choice. An all-motor Honda at the salt flats will take 3 days to reach top speed. So you haven't ever been out there, I guess. Let's see. Now I have something to go after. I'll be lucky to push 180. A Honda Goldwing. How long do you plan on doing this kind of testing? Well, so far I've been doing it for 30 years. So I think I'll keep going. Polyquad is a David Vizard patented arrangement of valves for 4 valves per cylinder. Okay. The all motor K24, I think that those guys are doing 2.7s or 2.75s. Those guys are making almost 400 at the tire with the NA motors. So that's actually more than enough to go. That's enough to go 200 on an NA motor. That's pretty good. They're doing it on methanol, so it's, you know, it's all of it. The power on the Honda, we made 725 at 29 pounds, but like I said, we only ever ran it at 17 pounds and low timing. Why no Honda CVCC head reviews? I love those cars. I would love to have one of those. My Honda isn't slow. It has a PTE 6766 and 150 shot on a Dart V18. That should go plenty good. 36 horsepower VW. A single cam Honda that will run away from a Hellcat. That seems like a lot. Mike, man, always the negative stuff. I don't know what the deal is. Kyle, usually airflow goes up with engine speed, but I would be interested in seeing that. What if we have two vastly different engines making the same horsepower number, but doing it at different engine speeds to see if the airflow number is exactly the same. I want to run that test, and we'll do an air hat on it to find out. I just need to find two wildly dissimilar combinations. What's the relationship with boost, compression ratio, and timing? The more of all of them that you have, with the exception of timing, the better off you are. I would love to have one of those early Civics again. That's kind of my favorite car. I would like to have one of those. I think even more than the S600. I like the way that they look, but I don't know that I want that drivetrain in it. Maybe an S600 with a B16 in it would be cool, or one of the early Civics with, I don't know if a K series would fit in that. What I really kind of want, for the thing that I would really like to have for Bonneville, would be an Insight. I drove a Grand Am Iron Duke and a Quad 4 back to back. There's probably a big difference between those two. The Civic that I drove was a 1999 Civic Si. I had an 87 CRX with a high fuel 1.5 liter. Did a high fuel motor have 3 valves per cylinder? Does compression ratio just make better response when boosted? No, compression ratio works like boost. Compression ratio, if you go up in compression, it adds power everywhere from the top to the bottom. It helps everything. So it helps response because it added low speed power, and it helps mid-range power, and it helps top end power. So a motor with 10-to-1 instead of 9-to-1 will basically make more power everywhere at any given boost level. The weird thing that happens though is that when you change that, you change the swept volume, you might be changing the cylinder filling relative to the boost level. So there's lots of interesting stuff going on there. Jake, we're here all the time, man. I'm giving out advice whether people want it or not. The Insight is the one with the fender skirts. It's the most aerodynamic version that they've made. I didn't think that the high fuel was a 3-valve engine either, but I could be wrong. An 84 Accord with the CVCC motor? Okay. Richard, can I PM you? I have a few questions to ask on a big motor project I'm doing. Yeah, I might not be able to help, but I can try. That's not right. Boom. I like the Honda motors that run backwards. The B16 is a reverse rotation also. The ZC was a twin cam motor, yeah. I haven't ever done anything on a NAPZ 8-plug 2.4 liter. I've changed the plugs and the wires and that kind of stuff, but I've never run one on the dyno. What did you use to tune the Civic? The one that we ran at Bonneville, we used Honda. Oh, you found the valve seals for the CVC valve. Yeah, that's important. First gen Integra from 86 to 89 had a ZZ type motor. People here know the CVC. We speak Honda here, man. Yes, a B17 for the Integra guys out there, for the twin cam GSR guys. Have you done any testing with a VR6? I have not, although I have done a supercharger for the other, the generic Golf motor, which was a 2-liter, just a naturally aspirated 2-liter. We did I think it was, I don't remember, it's either, I think it was a Vortec, yeah, because it had oiling on it. It was a Vortec. Did you ever partake in the SR20 versus KAT? Nah, people that argue about that stuff, I'm not interested in getting involved in that. Taking one side is okay. Like if you like the thing that you like, let's say that you're Gen 3 RX-7 guy, which that's awesome. That doesn't mean that that's the only good thing ever made, because it's not. That's awesome, but like a 71 Hemi Cuda is also awesome, just different. And so for guys to say that their thing is the only good thing is it's just silly. The 3 miles of vacuum hoses, lots of Mazdas had that, and the high fuel stuff definitely did. The Mitsubishi jet valve, yeah. Stratified charge. My first normal car was a red 86 Nissan 200 SX. Yep. 1.8. Does having dimples in the head ports work? Take a look at Eric's stuff. He did some flow testing on that. Which would be most efficient, tumble or swirl? Are they different ways of achieving the same thing? Well, you need to decide what you're trying to achieve, and then you decide how to achieve that. 89 Accord had the biggest vacuum map I've ever seen. Yeah, they just keep adding different lines to figure out different problems. Two more minutes. I'm really excited about the Honda stuff that Jimmy, my buddy, is doing. Did the J series swap in the NSX, so that's going to be a really good combination because he's got it running under boost. So that's going to be that's kind of a cool low buck approach to replacing your NSX motor, which is not cheap. And he has the J series hooked up to the NSX trans too, and he's going to drag race it. So that'll be a cool deal. Have you ever tuned a rotary motor? No, I have not. I want to run one on the engine dyno, but I never run one. Doesn't the 5.4 valve have VTEC? Nope, no VTEC. Just VVT. Yeah, nobody's going to go off on you here on an SR20 or KA, because if you add boost to any motor, it's good. So that we're all in on you adding boost to stuff. It's a rotary, it's a SR20, it's a whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Having the overhead camshaft Corvette. Now, GM claims to make big power. That motor does make a lot of power. It's a really high specific output, especially for a factory motor. They really stepped their game up. Hopefully it will last a long time and work. Variable VVT and VTEC are different things. VVT is just advancing and retarding the cam. VTEC changes to a whole nother cam profile. So they're switching over to a whole different cam profile. Not just advancing it or retarding it, they're changing over to different lift and different duration. And then later on, Honda added also variable cam to that. So they had two different cam profiles, at least two. They actually have one that has triple VTEC, but multiple cam profiles, and then advancing and retarding of those cam profiles. What do you think of the Ford Barra engines? I have one that I took apart, and I haven't got to test one yet, but obviously guys are making lots of power with them. The Corvette Zr1 is probably the closest to a V8 VTEC. I don't know why that would be. They did multiple runners, but that's not the same thing, at least on the original LT5. And then now a lot of the motors have VVT, have variable cam, but not multiple cam profiles. Everyone's welcome here, even people running hybrids. I like that the Honda Insight is exactly that. It was a hybrid, and I would love to have one of those. I would get rid of all the battery stuff, and I would just run a. What I wanted was I wanted an Insight, but with my Civic VX motor in there, and then I wanted that turbocharged. That was the ideal commuter combination for me, because it would get my Civic VX. I got 56 miles to the gallon, an honest 56, not the one that everybody, oh yeah, my thing got 50 miles to the gallon all the time. No, it didn't. There are very few cars that are on the road that actually do that consistently over a 400 or 500 mile trip. They don't do that. It's very hard to do. I know, because I've tried it on a lot of vehicles. The Sprint would do it. The Sprint would get like 50 or 51, and the VX even better. But if I had that engine in a very lightweight, very aerodynamic, very low rolling resistance Insight, and I wanted a turbo on it, because the turbo wouldn't affect fuel mileage when you're under cruise, because it would still go into lean burn. And then when you'd go into power enrichment and then boost, which was more power enrichment, the more you use that, obviously your fuel mileage would go down. But under cruise, it would still be the same. And I would like to combine that with an ultra aerodynamic, like lightweight vehicle that I think that the mileage would go up even more. It would kind of be cool. Yeah, the HXVX stuff were the lightest ones. It had it had the aluminum AC mount and the lightweight wheels, and all kinds of cool stuff. The ones that would get good fuel mileage, a lot of the diesel stuff, the turbo diesel stuff, Volkswagen and those were really good mileage masters. The Metro XFI was kind of the king of the high water mark of the really high mileage stuff. It was even better than the Civic VX. But the thing is, it had no power. A Civic or the Metro XFI, I think, was about 58 horsepower, and the Civic VX was like 92 or 93. So it was head and shoulders better than. It was actually fun to drive when you went into VTEC. It wasn't 200 or 300 horsepower fun to drive, but it was compared to when you went to go up a hill, like go up the Grapevine or Cajon Pass or something in a high fuel Metro or in an XFI Metro, you were downshifting. You were grabbing gears and putting it to the wood. The high fuel stuff were other good ones for Hondas. Those actually, as long as they were running right, they did pretty well. I've met Pete Ardema, Jake. I've met Pete Ardema many times. He's been to West Tech quite a bit. Yeah, the VW guys got kind of put through the ringer there in their diesel emission stuff. The Civic VX would actually run in lean burn under cruise. It was about 19-1. Okay, guys, it's time to get going. I've been here a long time, man. Come on. Does the Metro have a tow rating? Yes, you could actually tow the Metro with something else. They would allow you to do that. Thank you guys all for showing up. Make sure to check out the video that I posted up on the 5-liter stuff, you know, boosted 5-liter stuff. That's awesome. And then also make sure to go check out David Vizard's stuff on the 2.2-liter turbo head. Lots of good data there if you're a tech guy. Lots of techie stuff for you to take a look at. And then hopefully he'll have the part 2 and 3 and 7 or how many ever it's going to be of the porting and the exhaust flow, because that'll be interesting to see. I'm really curious to see not just how well the head does in terms of total peak flow, but what he's able to do through the whole curve. It will be good stuff. Thank you guys for showing up. I will see you all tomorrow.